Hey everyone, I'm Duane, and today I'll be working on just a small part of a painting. What I'm doing right now is called the still life. I'm painting it from direct observation. It's called the still life because it's painted from life and it doesn't move, so it's a still life. Yeah, I'll show you the setup that I have right now.
Recording is starting and I am muting.
Hello, I'm Duane Todman. I'm a classical realist fine artist. I paint in the academic genre, and what I do is called representational painting. I paint stuff to look like stuff. And today I'll be working on a still life. I'll show you the still life setup. It's called the still life because it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a painting from life, and the objects are still, they don't move, unlike if I was painting from a human subject. So I'll show you the setup, and I'll get started on a small passage that I'll be working on for the sake of this video. So this is the setup. I'm going to move in a little bit closer. It's a sewing setup, so I wanted to do the theme of sewing and creating cloth and fabric. So I have a thimble, a piece of cloth, a ribbon, scissors, another um, type of ribbon, um, some crochet needles, a cutter, another thimble, and some yarn. And when I paint this, I'm going to try and get it as detailed and as realistic as possible for the sake of the painting. And to help me do that, I start off painting it like this. Um, I do it in basically it's brown and white, but I do it basically in black and white, um, just so I can get all the underlying the simplest part, um, which is the value. I want to get all the values in correctly before I start working on it in color. And it also helps for the design and the overall look for it. When I do start painting in color, it'll have a warmer undertone to it. So I'm going to work on this part right here, this bottom part, and right there. I was working on this before we started, but for the sake of instruction, I'm going to work on the darkest part so I can tell you a little bit about what I'm doing, how it's done, and all that fancy stuff. Now, but when I started this, I began with a drawing. As you can see, I started it with a drawing in pencil, and that took about maybe 2 3 days to get completed, as complete as I could possibly want it, at least. So it took a couple of days, and now I've been working on this part for about 3 or 4 days as well. Um, and the point is to get everything filled in so that when it comes to getting the color in, I'll have less, I'll spend less time problem solving. Um, and I already know what colors I need, what colors I want to get in there, and I won't have to do certain drawing, um, problem solving while I'm painting in color. So I'm gonna get started in it right now. I chose to do this part because it is about the darkest area, and it's got some some changes in value, and it would be I think it would be the most difficult part when it comes to the color, because there are so many changes in value. And it also is one of my favorite parts of the piece in general. I'm also going to do this part right here just so I can get a clear view of what actually is there, and so that I know when painting, gauging the values is a relative thing, so it's easier to know what values, and a value is light and dark, how black or how dark something is versus how light or how white something is. So in order to correctly gauge the values, it's easier if you have the values in around a subject or a part of a painting. If you get everything around it um, correct, then it's easier to see how dark or how light something is going to be in the painting as you're painting it. So I'm going to get started. I'm using pretty small brushes. This is a Sienna Artist Loft brush that I got from Michael's Arts and Crafts. It's a 1, so I'm going to start using this one. And I don't know if you can see, you can't see what I'm actually painting. You can only see me painting it, but I'm going to move it. So I'm painting that part right there. Let me see if I can zoom in. I can't zoom in, but the black part is what I'm painting. And from here, you can't see very much detail, but not from the photo, from the camera, but I can see a lot of the details, and that's what I'll be working on getting in today. Now, I'm not going to go as dark as it really is. That's saved for the actual painting of it. The reason that I'm not going to go as dark as it really is because one, the paint, but I didn't tell you what I'm using right now. I'm using raw umber, and white, flake white, which is a lead white. And lead white is transparent, and the raw umber dries pretty fast. So I'm using these two. There's a lot of science behind it, but I'm using these two basically so that there's a strong paint film, and also so that it dries quickly. So raw umber and lead white. And yes, it's real lead paint. So I'm very careful with what I do because it's toxic. Um, and I started using lead white exclusively about 2 years ago. I like lead white because it has very nice transparency. I like to do portraits and figurative work. So with lead white, I'm able to get this glow that I wouldn't be able to get if I were using a more transparent. So I'm going to get started in here, and I'm starting with my darkest value. This is my palette. These are my value strings. Oh, and I'm also using turpentine to dilute the paint, to spread it on thin. With oil painting, which is what I'm doing right now, you paint in what's called fat over fat over lean. Fat means more oil. Oil is a type of fat, so fat is more oil, and lean is less oil in the paint. And we paint that way so that we don't have any cracking, and to minimize the amount of cracks 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years later, because as you may know, oil paintings have lasted over multiple centuries. Paintings from Raphael, Leonardo da Vinci, all those guys, their artwork was created in the 1600s. So now in the 2000s, we still have their work, and I want to help the conservators if ever my work is a valued item. I want to help them by painting using good um, practice. I'm gonna start right here first. I'm gonna do the dark part, which I'll show you. Actually, get up close to it. There's the dark part right there. I'm painting the black ribbon, but in between there's a dark piece and piece of the ribbon, the green or teal ribbon. So the goal is to get it to look as realistic as possible, which it's going to look pretty realistic, but you got to keep in mind that while the human eye is able to see a lot better than my iPhone camera, two, and realistically, let's just think about how a camera does work. Some cameras, a good DSLR camera has about 6,000 by 3,000 pixels when photo is completed. And human eye can see that, but the human hand is not able to fully create that. So just keep that in mind. Being human and not a machine or a robot, I'm unable to create with such accuracy. But one of the joys of being a painter is attempting to create with that same accuracy and getting my work to look as real to life as I possibly can. That's one of the challenges that I enjoy being an artist. I am able to test my own skill and my own ability, and I try to get things to be as realistic and sometimes idealized, but mostly I like to stick to realism and painting things as they are. I'm gonna start with the darkest part, and I'm probably going to have to fix some of the drawing um, because naturally, though we want to avoid any errors in drawing, naturally there may be errors simply because we got to consider the human element. Although I hope to paint paint and draw as well as a photograph would pick up a photo. I've got to be honest with myself and recognize that there are limits. So yeah. And for to get to know me a little bit, started out with my artistic journey when I was about 12 or 13. I was a graffiti artist, but I kept getting caught. So since I was pretty bad at being a graffiti artist slash criminal, when I was young, I told myself I wanted to be like Leonardo da Vinci, and I have not changed my mind since. What I have had, I've gained more artists to look up to. Um, but still, I that's still my goal. I want to be an artist of the finest caliber. So I'm steady working and trying to achieve that goal. And I'll zoom in. I'll bring the camera closer in a little bit, just so you can see what I'm doing. Because that you might not be able to see the change in value that I just made. As I'm working on this, I notice things when working on one area, other areas become at the forefront of the mind, and I notice errors in my painting or things that I have to fix. It's easy to forget to make something as light as it really is, or as dark. Because again, as I said, it's relative, and it's relative to the lightest light, the darkest dark. I don't have something in front of me that going basically off of years of knowledge and experience, but I don't have a scale in front of me, and I also didn't bring a value scale to compare in up at the actual surface. I mean, the actual objects that I'm painting. I didn't do that. So right here, it's very dark right here, and there's ridges. And one of my teachers, um, I am doing form. Form is basically a three-dimensional object. Um, Representational painting is taking three-dimensional objects and painting it to its likeness on a two-dimensional surface. So I'm trying to get the form and those things that create the three dimensionality, or the illusion of three dimensionality on a flat surface. And a lot of things, especially when working in the dark, there are a lot of subtle parts uh, to keep track of. A lot of things are dark, but not as dark as the darkest dark. So it takes a lot of squinting and a lot of um, patience. And there's actually in the actual teal part, this is the teal ribbon. There's actually very nice glow. So I'm gonna want to pay attention to that part and get that glow that we see in the dark here. You gotta be very careful because I don't want to change much of the drawing, and I want want to get it as precise as possible. In order to get that glow, what I did was I put a lighter value in the middle and surrounded it by darker values. And I'm shading it in very carefully. That's David back there, if you heard him. And in real life, naturally, nothing in nature is actually black. Things are just very light and dark shades of another color. Not even the sky is black at night. In nature, black represents a void or the complete or in physics, it represents a void or the complete absorption and non-reflection of light. So when you see something that's black in real life, basically it absorbs all light, or it absorbs light and it doesn't reflect anything, or it absorbs no light and it just reflects. It reflects what it can't absorb. And to me, painting is it can be a boring process. Um, what drives me to get through the seemingly meaningless task, the repetitive and boring nature of the task, is the finished product. Um, when successfully completing a painting, that's one of the best feelings that I've ever felt, having successfully completed a painting. And to constantly see my progress is something that I enjoy. It's a nice challenge for me, and it keeps me on my toes. Um, the reason I like painting is because, to me, the difference between a photograph and a painting is that photograph is point and shoot. It's great for capturing a memory quickly, but a painting is, you put so much effort into it that the painting essentially becomes a part of you. Um, the more meaning and heart goes into it. I wouldn't say more, but in order to complete a painting, a lot of heart and effort and meaning has to be behind um, what you're painting, or else why else would you spend your time on something if it doesn't mean anything to you? There's a lot of um, love that goes into the process. So I'll tell you a little bit about value. Um, Value is the lights versus dark. Um, Middle value is about 5. It goes on a scale of 1 through 10. 1 being the brightest, or in some circles, I'll explain it how I understand it. One is the lightest color, the brightest white, and 10 is the darkest dark. Um, and that's how I learned when I was in college and through my research online. Now right here, there's like a little gradient, so I'm gonna try and capture that gradient as it appears. And shading, I'm telling you how to shade right now. So when shading, what you basically want to do is get the two colors that you want to blend into each other close, and I would recommend going over a little bit. And you want to get the light into, you want to get the dark into the light. I like to shade dark into light because it's easier, especially when doing gradients. If you shade dark into light, you don't pollute your, because white actually, once you get white inside of a paint, you can't take it out. But you can add, it's better to add white than to remove white. Once you get white in there, you can't remove the white. So I shade from dark into the light because I want to avoid contaminating the darker part with too much white. And how I've learned to paint for people who are more experienced with painting. Oh man, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yes, how I learned to paint is to one, I don't tend to use black. I use brown, or I mix my own black. To mix your own black, you would just use burnt umber or raw umber. I like to use burnt umber. Use burnt umber and blue. Burnt umber is a reddish color. Take uh, two complementary colors, your darkest complementary colors, and you mix them, and that'll give you black, which is basically a dark gray. When you take blue and orange, you get a gray. And so I take my blue and my red. I mean, my blue and my red, which is burnt umber. Burnt umber is a reddish version of brown. Take my blue and my red, and I mix it to get black. I don't like to do it. Well, have you? I'm doing good, man. I'm doing a little video right now. So I take my burnt umber and my red, my burnt umber and my blue, and I mix them to get black. So I'm gonna show you the outcome of this area. See the little gradient that I got, and there's a little glow. I tried to get the glow. My camera doesn't show it very well, but so now that I'm gonna bring it closer. Hopefully you can see. So now that I got that part finished, I'm going to work on my black. Now there's a lot of a lot of design in it. I made it simpler for me to get by paying attention to the negative space. For those of you who don't know what negative space is the space between two objects. So instead of using black right now, I'm using raw umber because I don't want to go as dark. I don't want to do my darkest dark because it's easier to in the later stages of the painting. It's a lot easier to if it's too dark underneath the painting, it'll be dark. You'll see that darkness. If it's light, you can bring it down and later you can bring the value down to its darker parts in the later stage. But if it's already dark, you can't. It's hard to change that value back to a light, and it'll show through the preceding layers or succeeding layers. So I'm gonna fill in the darker part now. Where the black would be. And also I want to get I think it's a beautiful effect when you can see some of the underpainting, especially if it's a warm underpainting. It's a very beautiful effect and a sense of glowing that you can get when you layer on top, especially if you could see it under the color layer. And I'm gonna do all of the black parts right now. I'll make it easier for me to gauge the values um, that are actually there in the design, which would be dark, very dark, but it's still lighter. So I'm just filling in the negative space right now. And since it's black cloth, that means that when I actually do the painting, most of my values are going to be very dark, so it's going to be very subtle to get the form and the three-dimensionality and the roundness of the actual fabric. I'm just paying attention to the shapes that's between the design and the black cloth. And doing that just simplified a whole lot, um, because now I know that there isn't going to be anything as dark as that, as the black. So I'm able to get the darker values, which are very, very, very subtle. I'm able to get those in here and maintain the correct degree of lightness versus darkness. I'm actually using a very small brush right now. And it's customary to work from light to dark. Not sure.
These are like the photography juice right here.
Yeah.
Let's say, I don't know, use those shits. Other than just plugging them in. Not even on the toilet. When the sun explodes, then what?
The word.
Has that photographer dude been here? I don't know.
A couple of times.
I gotta do some hats for him. I don't know how to get in touch with him.
He's got some cards right here.
Oh, does he? Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. This is like a digital option where it's like you scan it and the information all gets stored in your phone, you know what I'm saying?
Where I think that digital.
Gotta be something.
That'd be dope.
Yeah, it'd just be easier. You know, having to maintain the cards or people like having to buy cards over and over. I hate having to buy cards over and over. Like, damn, I ran out. That's the end of shit's out. But try to find something for people to scan it and then get access to them on social media or whatever's like listed on the thing. It's pretty cool.
And we're almost done with this for today. Just a couple more leaves. I don't know if you noticed, but in the shadow, it's kind of difficult to get it as dark as possible without having it blend into everything. Um, but again, I have to paint as my eye sees it. Now I'm gonna put in the white base, and then we'll be all set. So it's important to note that even though it's white, it still has its own value, which is gonna be some type of gray. So it's not gonna be pure white. And this point of the stage is to separate your thinking from being color, because usually if you get the values right, then you get the whole painting correct. First it starts with the drawing, then it starts with the value, and then finally color. But if you can get the value and the drawing correct, then you've already mastered 90% of the painting. And value is a very subtle game, because there's an infinite amount of values between black and white. And we are all set. And I'll do a little close up so you can see what it looks like. And that's the part that I finished. You can't see everything, but there's a lot of information in there that the camera can't pick up. But it's there and my eye can see it, even though the camera can't see it very well. And that's it for today. Hope you learned something, and I hope you guys had a very informative lesson. And I hope to encourage you guys who aren't artists right now. I hope to encourage you to pick up a paintbrush and become artists. Yeah, have a great day.